Good evening. Fall River Community Media, FRC Media, is proud to sponsor tonight's forum featuring the candidates for Fall River City Council. My name is Keith Tebow, Director of FRC Media, and I'll be serving as moderator for tonight's forum. I want to thank the staff of the Cultural Center on South Main Street for hosting us tonight. We're holding two City Council forums this evening. This is panel number one. Our second panel will begin at 8 p.m. tonight. All candidates were invited to participate, and the makeup of our two panels were determined via a drawing. Joining us tonight are, in alphabetical order, Paulo Amaral, Linda Pereira, Andrew Raposo, Matthew Springer, Ricky Tith, and Laura Washington. Thank you all for joining us tonight. Candidates Sean Kadim, Christopher Peckham, and Leo Pelletier were also invited to attend tonight, but were unable to join us this evening. Also joining us tonight is a panel of journalists who will be asking questions of the candidates. They are Susan Netter of WSAR, Pamela Martin of Fall River Government Television, and Michael Sylvia of Fall River Reporter. Thank you for joining us tonight. The format of tonight's debate is as follows. Our forum will last 90 minutes. There will be no opening statements, but each candidate will be allowed a 90-second closing statement. Each candidate will answer every question posed by our panelists and will have 90 seconds to answer that question. There will be no rebuttals. Prior to each question, we'll randomly draw a candidate, and that candidate will respond to the answer first. We will then go around the room, so all candidates will answer each question. Candidates will only be asked to answer a question once, but I think tonight, with 6 candidates here, candidates may be asked to answer a question first on more than one occasion. At the end of the evening, whatever candidate is still left in our drawing, we'll select that candidate, and that candidate will be presenting his or her closing statement first. All right, let's get started with our questions tonight. Our first question will be asked by Susan Netter of WSAR, and the question will go to Andrew Raposo. Sue.
Thank you. We often hear that Fall River's form of government designates a strong mayor and a weak city council. How do you interpret that? And what do you see your role is as a city councilor?
Thank you for the question. I appreciate it. I think the biggest thing about city government here is we need to work collaboratively together. In my career as an educator, we realized that we accomplish more together than we do separately. So I think it's important that there's an equal balance here. A cooperation between the mayor's office and the city council is pivotal to the success of Fall River. I feel sometimes right now there's a lot of division going on between both offices, so it's important as a city council to lead that charge, to build collaboration among my colleagues, among the citizens, and also the administration as well.
Thank you. Mr. Springer?
As we've all seen just recently with the budget debacle that's going on and the city council and the administrating butting heads on playing a he said, she said game, and this guy's saying I did it, this guy said I didn't do it, obviously gets us nowhere besides still in the same situation we are right now. So that being said, obviously working together, doesn't matter your political view, your aspirations, you have to work with that administration. Otherwise, going forward goes nowhere. You're just going into the wind and 2 steps forward and 1 back. In my line of work, I work in an emergency room. If you don't work together, guess what? Nothing gets done. So this is something I'm super familiar with and super willing to kind of put forth, working on the city council and working with whatever administration, regardless if the one I chose or not at that point.
Thank you. Mr. Tith.
For all the years that I've been in Fall River, and I see our elected official is like one that's like lack of collaboration and networking, and I'm hoping like being a councilor change that the culture, so by trying to draw everybody working together and hopefully try to do the check and balance.
Thank you. Ms. Washington.
The mayor's office is the executive branch, and you want them to be a powerhouse, but what you want is to really have good collaboration with your city council. I think it's extremely important that you do show collaboration and communication amongst your colleagues and amongst the 6th floor. A lot can be done behind doors and get your point across, but you have to work together. It's imperative to move the city forward. It's how people perceive things, to bring trust back into the community. So I'm going to agree with the panel that communication, collaboration is key. But remembering your role as, you know, where the city council is checks and balances, your mayor is the executive branch, and you have to have great communication and put your own agendas aside for the greater good for our community.
Thank you. Mr. Amaro.
There's no doubt that the communications channel between the 6th floor and the city council has been severed. And at the end of the day, we, the taxpayers, are losing out. And we need to come together and stop the blame game. I know it's election season, but really we need to concentrate on what's at the core of the issues, which is the budget, and making sure that we have services available to the taxpayers and really concentrate on the taxpayers. And we've seen from this city council and this administration that they're going back and forth, and really they're forgetting about the taxpayer base and just concentrating on the inner fighting. I think as a city council, you need to reach out to the mayor as well as the mayor reaching out to you. It's not a one-way street, it's a two-way street, and we need to forget about the partisan politics and make sure we work together.
Thank you. Councilor Pereira.
Both branches are different. The mayor's office is executive and the city council is legislative. And those are roles that people need to understand and stay within those roles. When the legislative branch wants to think that they're the executive branch, it's not going to work. I have worked with 7 mayors, and I got along with every single one of them. And if I had a question on the agenda, I would call, I would ask, whether it be the mayor, a department head, getting to a council meeting, being prepared, and knowing your research before getting there. I have no problem with working with Mayor Coogan. I have no problem calling him. There are briefings that are conducted, and councilors are given times to come in. If that time's not appropriate, other times can be given. Phone calls can be made. So I would say that if there's concern, the concern is that the communication needs to be two-way. But this mayor's door has been always open to me, and I feel very comfortable asking any question of him that I need to ask. But people need to remember their roles. You're a councilor, not the mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we get to our second question, this is the first question we've been got the responses in this room. If I can have you all just speak up just a little bit more so we can hear it back in this part of the room. It's in a big auditorium here, big hall, and it'd be good if we can just speak up just a little bit. Our audio person will be able to adjust you for the video. So if we can just have you do that, it'd be helpful to the panelists and myself as well. Thank you. Our next question is going to be asked by Pamela Martin from FRG TV, and it will be answered first by Matthew Springer.
Okay.
Pam.
Thank you all for being here. The state legislature is hammering out details and the legality of safe injection sites. With over 2,000 overdose deaths in 1 year in Massachusetts, the mayor of Somerville says the time is now, but Governor Baker is not so sure. Safe injection sites have been proven to reduce rates of HIV, hepatitis C, and of course overdose death. But no doubt it's a controversial program. The addicted population can go to these sites, for those who might not know, and receive clean needles and use their drug of choice under the supervision of medical staff. Caseworkers, coaches, they're always available to help those addicted hopefully move towards treatment. Is this a suitable program for Fall River? Where does it go?
Wow, great question. And this has been something that's been talked about for as long as I can remember. And working in the medical field, and specifically the hospital, I see this almost on a daily occurrence. It is absolutely the most devastating thing that can happen to a family member, a friend, an overdose. Do I think a safe injection site is the answer? Not particularly. I think it almost wants to condone it a little bit. On the flip side, can it save lives? Absolutely. That being said, the access to treatment, I think, and early intervention is definitely more of the answer to curbing the addiction. Starting them off right in school, showing them and not sugarcoating it as much, and showing them the hard facts of how devastating overdoses can be, whether it causes a fatality or whether it causes you to lose your friends, your family. They'll steal from their loved ones, they break into your cars at night, and violence stems from it on all aspects. So do I think safe injection sites are a good start in Fall River? I'm gonna go with no. On the flip side, I'm gonna say earlier intervention with younger adolescents and teens is definitely more of a, gonna give more of a positive outcome on curbing the overdose problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tith.
Safe side, I think it's if we could observe from other city first before we put it on the site, because it's not very because we don't know where it's going and how it's going to turn out. So I wouldn't want to put that on in Fall River yet until we study that first.
Thank you. Ms. Washington.
So I appreciate this question. This is right in my wheelhouse. As an addiction specialist, this has come up a lot in my career. And I don't have the perfect answer for that. I don't think that there's, for myself, me personally, have enough information to make a decision on either side. I see both sides of the coin. So I think, is it something that should be looked into? Absolutely. Is it a yes, definite yes? Is it a definite no? I think no. I think it's a multidisciplinary approach. I think that how the question was worded, there's a lot of people involved in it. It's not just, I think people think people just come in and they're shooting drugs and the hallway and nothing. I know that there's a lot of social worker involved, and so I think it needs to be looked into. I don't think that it's 100% yes and 100% no, but the bigger question is what are we doing for prevention? And so there's a lot of talk about treatment, but prevention really is the key. And what are we doing for prevention with substance use? And that is really stopping the flow, plugging up those holes in a sinking ship. People are constantly bailing out the ship and they're not finding out why it's sinking. And so that's where prevention comes in. So prevention here starts in schools, and that is at a very young age. And so I would say the best answer to that is it needs to be looked into. It should be looked into. A definite yes or no. You can't get, that is a very long thought out process that needs to be vetted. But prevention.
Thank you. Time's up. Mr. Amaral.
Progressive ideas like this and progressive thinking like this is exactly what Fall River needs. And to be honest with you, is what we need to lead and show other communities that we have the capability of think outside the box and not follow everybody else. I think this is something that offers a safe haven, if you will, for people who suffer this disease. And to me, instead of them doing it in the parks and public areas, a situation where they can go and feel safe and actually inject themselves without being in a public way in front of the children, to me, is a progressive thinking. It's the right direction. Is it going to solve everything? Probably not. We need more education, and we need to invest in prevention. I think it's a big thing, but I would 100% agree with this. I think it's a step in the right direction, and I think it's the kind of leadership that Fall River needs to show and advocate. And unfortunately, that's kind of lacking these days, but I totally agree that this is one of the pieces of the puzzle that need to move forward, and that, along with education and along with prevention, is really the key.
Thank you. Councilor Pereira.
I'm going to be honest with you. I think that this is a discussion that should be had with the experts in this field, and look at the pros and cons. What areas have had safe site injections? What are the statistics there? What are the positives that come out of that? What are the negatives that come out of that? I think it's a discussion that needs to be had by the people that deal with this. Do I feel badly for so many people? I don't think there's any one of us in this room that doesn't know someone that has a problem with drug addiction. What I agree with is that we do need the prevention, and we need that to start at a very young age. That's where it should start. Just saying no doesn't work. If you have real good self-esteem, you're able to say no. So what are we lacking to do regarding prevention? Yes or no on this? I'd say I want to see the material before making a rash decision. I always like to be prepared and do research. Thank you, Mr. Tebow.
Thank you. Mr. Raposo.
It is a complex issue that requires a multi-tiered response. It's not as simple as do one thing or another. Every situation is unique. I think it's very easy to color code it one way, so we have to look at the ways we can handle it. I agree, education, again, being an educator, early prevention, getting to the children, educating them about what this could do to you, how it could harm you, how do we help them, access to services. You know, sometimes public outreach is also the best thing. Working with children, saying to them, hey, listen, these are the effects that can happen. And how do we help you, and how do we help your friends? Growing up as a child in the Fall River public school systems, this is some of the things we learned as kids. And we knew to stay away from drugs. Not to use the old statement, don't do drugs, right? We learned that. And that's something we need to continue. I sometimes think there's not enough public outreach and education for children to help them as we grow this next generation. But I do believe to say one thing is gonna solve the problem, it's not. It's a multi-tiered response to fix this very complex problem.
Thank you. Next up will be Michael Sylvia from the Fall River Reporter, and he will be asking the question. It will be answered first by Laura Washington. Mike?
On today's Fall River Show with Mark Dion, Fall River Chief of Police Jeff Cardoza stated that gunshots in Fall River have almost doubled compared to last year. Can you provide something specific that you as a city council or as a body of city council could do to bring those numbers down in 2022?
Ms. Washington.
So I wish I had the answer. Being a body of 9 in the city council, I go back to collaborating with the police department, with the police officers on the street, and ask them what are their needs. I think that a lot of times people sit around the table that don't have the information and have these great ideas. But what I would want to do is work with the Public Safety Committee and with the police officers themselves. The boots on the ground, what are you seeing? And what is the community, what are their needs? I think it would be not right for me to come up with an idea off the top of my head. I'm not a police officer, I'm not out in the streets, but I will tell you that I was at an event that the police held in the park down in Griffin Street, and they are afraid, and they do now want to go out, and we're thrilled that the police were there. So breaking the stigma of the community doesn't like the police is number one. Being there to support our police and our community is massive, and bridging those gaps. To me, community policing is where it's at. I am a big proponent of community policing, but that's me. I'm not law enforcement, and so going back to the table, sitting around with those men and women who are boots on the ground and asking them what are their needs and what are the community's needs.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
Look, this is not a complex problem. There's an easy solution for this, and it all goes back to appropriate the funds to have enough manpower, enough patrolmen patrolling our streets. At any given time, we have about 10 to 12 cars patrolling the streets in a city of 90,000, and perhaps even more than 90,000, but that's what the census said. That's just not enough police in our streets. And we have right now about 148 patrolmen. We have vacancies that have been appropriated for, but we don't have the manpower, so it all comes down to manpower. Right now, there's very low morale in the police department because they're being forced for overtime. They can't respond to all the calls, and I feel like we should give them more resources than we are right now. Right now, we're putting some of these resources towards administrative positions instead of supporting our police and fire. And to me, giving the resources to the police, making sure there's enough bodies, patrolmen on the streets is very important, and that's where the problem is. We don't even have enough cops right now to prosecute these bikers going down the street without plates, without lights. We're letting things go, and we're sending the wrong message that it's okay to commit crime and you're gonna get away with it, because the council and the administration are not actively and putting on more patrolmen and appropriating the money to have more bodies on the street, more patrolmen on the street. So it comes down to having more cops on the street, really, and the support of both branches of government.
Thank you. Councilor Pereira.
Well, let me tell you this. We have put more police on the street. One of the problems we've had is that through COVID, they weren't having the trainings. So people going in to be trained to become officers was an issue. We also had people who retired earlier than we anticipated that they would retire because police didn't want to do the job anymore. And they did a great job. So you have those two facets. Now you have another police exam where we normally had 300, 350 people applying to be police officers. We got down to 120, 150. So what are the resources to pick from? And yes, people will say, you need to get the police that are in the building, out of the building, and onto the street. The police that are in the building are working vice unit, sexual, domestic violent unit. They're dealing with other crimes. They can't just say, okay, I'm going to put this file on the side and not worry about that sexual abuse case because I've got to go out on the street. So there is not what people think is that we have all this manpower in the station. We don't have that manpower in the station. But this chief is an excellent chief, and he also has ATF and the Bristol County Task Force looking at where are these guns coming from. That's what you got to find out.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Raposo.
I think at the end of the day, solid budgeting will help booster our police department. At the end of the day, having more police officers will lead to safer streets and a better community for all of us. Right now, the police department is running slim. We need to further long-term invest into our police and fire departments, our public safety, because again, keeping our streets safe, keeping our kids safe and families safe, to be able to walk through the streets of Fall River and not worry that something's going to happen to them, should be of top priority of anyone who is running for public office.
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Great question. We all know putting more police on the street, can lower violence and crime and things like that. But it's going back to a gunshot is very, very fast, loud echoes. So in order for a police officer to physically catch this gunshot, they have to have their eyes on it at this exact moment. So I don't think more police will lower gunshots per se, to go to the question. What does lower gunshots in erratic areas is teaching people about guns, about safety. I myself happen to be a concealed carry permit holder. You go to the class, you learn about it, you learn how to handle the gun, how to operate it safely, and use it when appropriately. That being said, the police officers, obviously, if anyone knows, they answer, I believe, 100% of the calls they receive. So they are very, very busy. Unless you have something drastic going on, your call gets put down to the bottom of the list, and it could be hours before someone shows up. More police, obviously, lower call times down. That being said, I think education on gun safety, gun handling will lower these statistics, and people with illegal guns are the problem, not the people that know how to use them.
Thank you. Mr. Teth, before you answer, can you just maybe speak up just a little bit more for us? That'd be great. Your turn.
For public safety is always a critical needs because one, lack of manpower, two, a lot of program with the community, especially like in a minority community because due to language barrier. So if elected, I want to make sure I want to work with the police department to make sure that we make sure that in the community, like neighborhood or street, they welcoming and more welcoming and stuff. We could do like a community cookout or just a daily basis, monthly, just go out there and introduce who you are.
Thank you. Ready for our next question. It'll be Sue Netter again from WSAR. And the question will be answered first by Paulo Amaral.
If you had the unilateral authority, no questions asked, unilateral authority, what would your number one priority be to improve the lives of Fall River residents, and how would you accomplish it? And the purpose of the question is, what is your priority?
Well, my priority, I have two priorities. I think the biggest issue facing this city, without a doubt, is the budget that we're faced with a budget that's not balanced. We have a structural deficit, and we really need to set ourselves up for the future, because I'll tell you, the economy is good now, but it's going to get worse. And if we don't take care of the problems that we have now, in 2 or 3 years from now, it's only going to get worse. So without a doubt, the first thing that I think that we should do is concentrate on the deficit, concentrate on figuring out where we're going to get this, the money that we're using now. We're using a lot of one-time money, so we have to figure out where that's going to come from next year and the year after that. And then the other thing goes back to, again, to public safety. I think it's the way Fall River has become. It's become almost impossible to let your kids go out and ride bikes. I think safety and the finances of this city are paramount to anything else. And if I had unilateral decision making, that's what I would be concentrating on. That's what I would put my resources into figuring out a balanced budget, a budget that could sustain itself going forward in the next couple of years. And then the other thing is basically give the support to our police and make sure that we have enough manpower again on the streets. I think those are two important things that I understand there's two branches of the government. I understand that we have to work together, but if I had the power to...
Thank you. Thank you. Councilor Pereira.
I think that my number one priority to the people of Fall River is to be accessible and to be accountable. Because no matter what you talk about, people have certain concerns. Whether you think their concerns are major or minor, it is their concern. And I think that you have to be accessible and accountable to all of the residents of the city. And yes, we want a safe city, we want a clean city, but why is our city not clean? Why are people throwing trash all over the place? So what do? Hire people to clean the streets? And to some people, that is a major concern. And what are the solutions to every single one of those problems? You know, we talked about public safety earlier. I'm the one that pushed for ShotSpotter to be put in again. And the reason I did was because when a gunshot is made, then immediately you can go to that location and you get witnesses, fresh witnesses, so we can put that person who was shooting a gun, put them where they belong. But I think accessibility and accountability is key. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Raposo.
I believe my number one priority is the citizens of Fall River, helping them, because at the end of the day, their quality of life is a top priority of my own. I live in the city. I'm fortunate enough to have own a house in the city. At the end of the day, we want a better quality of life for our residents and for our kids. When I look in the eyes of my children at the school every day, I see that we want to have a solid, safe community for them. And again, to better their quality of life, there's a few things that we need to do collectively. We've talked about public safety, we've talked about education, we need to invest in our infrastructure. We need to have safe roads that we can walk through and drive through. But at the end of the day, we need to understand that we work for the people of the citizens of Fall River, and we want to do what is for the best interest of them.
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Great question. This is something I talked about last election, and I'm going to stick to this on this election. One of my biggest things, especially looking at the previous 48 months, we've been through all kinds of stuff with COVID, with the last administration that still has us in the news for all these negative impacts. It's time to put the positive back in Fall River. Fall River has this amazing group of hardworking, diverse people. We have so many amazing things here that need to be brought forth rather than all this negative black cloud stuff we have where you talk to someone from God knows where, you say from Fall River, you're like, whoa, that's the place where all the, the violence and the mayor that's in the news. So anyway, one of the things as he talked about was you drive, I don't know if anyone's driven down 79 lately, there's quite literally like a bush in the middle of the high speed lane covering a sign. Who's responsible for that? And why is it not taken care of? It's literally not even an aesthetic thing, it's a safety issue that's covering a highway sign. Well, who's not driving down the highway and seeing this? I don't get it. So that's one thing that really irks me every time I drive down that highway, and making sure we're putting the citizens first, putting our tax money where it's supposed to go, and making sure these things are getting taken care of, because it's not just a matter of trash, which is a bad thing. Now it's a matter of literally safety on the roads that we drive on. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tith.
My first priority is to restore the confidence and pride of the Fall River that we once lost, we had. And by doing that, change more in government, in City Hall, more cultural by creating program with my with the colleagues and with the mayor, to see if we could bring some more folks to make feel comfortable when they go into City Hall, or let them know about more what the infrastructure of City Halls do every day, and then get on with the public safety.
Thank you. Ms. Washington?
I really like what some of the panelists were saying, and they're absolutely right. It's bringing the positive back into the city and what people feel about it. What people want. They want a clean, safe city to live in that they can afford. That's what I said in my speech earlier. So that is extremely important. So we need to focus on a clean, safe city. Those would be the priorities. If I could do that all on my own and that's where I would focus, that's exactly where I would focus. How do you do that? Look, people want pride in their city. If you live in this city, you love this city. You're like me, this is our city. We love our city. That's why I'm doing this. So really it's, where are our businesses? What can we do for our businesses? What needs to be done? And it all goes back to communication. It costs nothing to know how to communicate with our business community, with our constituents, with the people that live here. What do people need? And it's bringing people together, having meetings, finding out what they need, and how do we execute what they need to bring that pride back. To look at the building that we're in. It's absolutely beautiful in here. This is the pride of Fall River. That's what we need to focus on. Having, again, it all comes back to a clean, safe city to live in that we love.
Thank you. Pamela Martin is up next to ask our next question, and it will be answered first by Ricky Tith. Pam.
When growing up, what were you taught about race and culture? How can you, me, our children, our families be actively anti-racist instead of simply not racist? And what are you doing to support and help people of color in our community?
Mr. Tith.
That's a good question, Pam, especially for me, when growing up, it's always a stereotype, call names and stuff. But in there, I would like to get more, if it get work with the school committee to educate the young teenager about racial, social racial and stuff, because I think that's the first thing that we need to educate before we start any other place.
Thank you. Ms. Washington?
Growing up, I had the privilege of growing up. My father was a preacher, so we grew up around many different races and many different cultures. So I was born into being around many different types of people without any biases. So I was very blessed in that sense. I have a biracial daughter, and so being aware is one of the most important things that we can do, asking questions and seeing the need. Again, it goes back to communication. I may walk through the day and say, like, listen, I'm not seeing anything, but my daughter may have something completely different to say. And so it's really being open to other people's experiences and listening to them, and what can we do to bring people together. And it goes back to, I think it's imperative that the City Council work very, very closely with the school committee because those issues start at a very, very young age. And so, being aware and being open to listen.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
So, as we know, this country was basically founded on two things, really, if you think about it. Slavery and freedom of religion. And we have a huge problem here with racism because of our founding values. And I think we are fortunate enough in Fall River where we're a multicultural city, and we don't have the same effects that nationally that we have with the racism and the problems that we have nationally. I believe that the first thing we need to do here is basically get along with everybody and teach our kids that no matter what color your skin is, no matter what you believe is, at the end of the day, we're all human beings, we're all here for a cause, and we're all here to get along with each other and make our city be the best it can, and just go forward with our best ideas and embrace each other for who we really are. I don't think that, just because somebody thinks different than you, that you should have a problem with that person. I think, again, like I said, we're very fortunate in Fall River that we don't have too much of a national problem, like when it comes to races and stuff like that. But I think, again, my whole thing is embracing each other and just loving one another and doing what's right for the city. I think at the end of the day, it's education and doing what you think is right and helping each other out.
Thank you. Councilor Pereira.
This is a very good question. I'm glad that you asked it. We have to get to know one another. And I think that those barriers need to be broken. I had talked to the mayor about doing Fall River Celebrates Diversity. And you've heard me speak about that, Pam. And the reason that I wanted to do that was because we in Fall River are blessed with people from all backgrounds, all cultures. And why not have an event that you could give samples of different ethnic food, and you could have a stage set up and do different ethnic dances, a song, a talk. But somehow or another, when we all sit at the table, when we eat together, when we share food, we become bonded. And you'd get to know people. I mean, I went to a Muslim birthday party, and I found that when they sang happy birthday and they sliced the cake, the little boy gave a piece first to the grandfather, who took a piece, then the grandmother took a piece, then the mother, then the father. It showed respect of a generation. Let's learn those things. And the best way to learn those things is to have us all together. People love Fall River Celebrates America, and that is tourism. It brings everybody together.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Raposo.
I was fortunate enough growing up here in Fall River to be in the public schools with many different students of different races, religions, and ethnicities. As a faithful Catholic, I also teach my kids every day at the school that we have to look past skin color. We have to look past where you come from, because at the end of the day, we all created equal. We should treat each other that same way. I think sometimes we do too much talking and not enough listening, and it's hard to be in someone's shoes unless you sit and listen and understand what they're going through. So I think right off the bat, understanding how people feel, where they come from, and the challenges they face will help the greater community get past racism. But we have to start and open that conversation. Sometimes it's an uncomfortable conversation to have, but we got to start with a really strong baseline. Everyone here, no matter who you are, where you come from, what you believe in, we're all in this together, and we have to treat it that way.
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Great question. Fortunate for us, if you've lived in Fall River all your life like me, we have one of the most diverse population that I've ever seen anywhere I've ever traveled. And let's face it, no one can make Vavo soup like she can. So racism, I think, is slowly really a thing of the past. I mean, early intervention, as he said, and talking to the children, obviously color of skin, race, religion, orientation, means it's transparent, I think, mostly at this point. Me growing up in the medical field and working in the field that I have, I've taken care of every walk of race, religion, you name it. So that being said, I think that it's becoming more of a thing of the past. The little that's left is being caught early in the schools, and I think here in Fall River, I don't think that's going to be much of a problem, if any, much longer. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Our next question will be asked by Michael Sylvia, and it'll be answered first by Councilor Pereira.
Rents are too high in Fall River. Do you support rent controls? That'd be a yes or no question. And if not, what are your solutions to get cost of living in Fall River cheaper?
I don't think that that's going to happen, Mike. I don't think we're going to have rent control, and I'll tell you why. We were talking about this earlier outside. People are buying houses now, a three-family house that they're paying $400,000 for. Now you've got a mortgage for $400,000. How are you going to pay your mortgage when your tenant is paying you $600 or $650? You're not going to do it. And I don't see that we're going to be able to implement rent control. I think that some situations, people don't want a two-family or a three-family. I think that there needs to be a push towards, we were looking this week at tiny houses. Where do they do that in other communities? Where are they? Because people can work a minimum wage job and afford a tiny house by themselves. You know, I work a lot with the veteran community. If you're a single veteran and you're working and it's one pay coming in, how are you ever going to get an apartment? So I think we need to start looking at things like that, because those are the units that we're really lacking in. Senior citizens that are living alone, we're lacking in those units. Not, I just don't believe rent control would ever exist. I don't.
Thank you. Mr. Raposo.
I also do not believe rent control is something that's going to be a possibility here. But I think what we can do, I mean, a lot of the economy on a broader scale, we cannot control. What we can do is allow our residents to have access to help, because there are plenty of people who are struggling right now. There's plenty of homelessness going on across the country and even in Fall River. It starts with lending a helping hand to those who need it. I think that's the biggest thing we need to accomplish. Public access to public services would also be helpful. Housing, whatever we can do as elected officials, whatever the city can do to assist those individuals, we should do that. I think often enough, people don't know those services exist, and we have to help them get to where they need to be.
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Great question. Rent control, simple answer, won't work. As Councilor Pereira said, she sees 3 families going for $400,000, and being a realtor myself, that's actually on the cheap end, they're going for 500 plus, 3 or 4 of them a week. Math wouldn't work out with low rents. As he was speaking of, there is tons of programs. I happen to own a multifamily myself, like Raft, and I've had tenants that have used it in the past. It's based on income and different things, where they pay the landlord directly. The tenant doesn't have to worry about paying the rent, comes right to us. Simple answer. The cost of living is going up. That's something we can't control. We can't control prices of gas and groceries and things we need daily. So I think in Fall River, rent control right now just wouldn't work. It wouldn't sustain. It creates an artificial housing market, and I don't see it working.
Thank you. Mr. Tith.
I'm not fond of rent control, because that is just like stopping all of investment to come into the city, or putting more economic right in the middle, stable like that. But because there's like other program, like Councilor Pereira said, we could give to them and let them help them any way we can with that.
Thank you. Ms. Washington?
I'm going to have to mirror. I don't know if rent control would be an option for Fall River. But with that being said, I also don't think that we stop the conversation there. What can we do differently? Is there ideas? Where is the conversation with that? I don't know, but has it been talked about? Can landlords opt in? Is there a tax break for landlords that want to cap their rent and not charge such high rent? But if people want to pay market rate housing, they should be able to pay market rate housing. The problem is, it's really the working class here who is not eligible for those other programs, who are working and have to pay their rent. So we have to look at those people who don't have a mortgage, can't apply for these programs. They don't meet that bracket, but what can they do? And so what do we do for those landlords that say, I'm not going to charge them $1,500, this family is a working family, I'm going to charge them $1,000. What do we do to that landlord that keeps their rent there? So those are the ideas that I think could be looked at if possible.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
Rent control is something that I believe is never going to happen. We live in a capitalist society, and basically supply and demand drive prices. Now, the whole panel agrees that rent control is not going to happen, it's not a thing, but nobody's come up with a solution, or at least help to alleviate the taxpayer. What can the city control? The city can control fees on water and sewer and the tax levy. So what you can control is what you should be concentrating on. We should take some of the burden off of the taxpayer, especially for water and sewer. And what that does is, it gives them a little bit of playroom where they don't have to raise their rents all the time. Because what ends up happening is, the more we increase taxes, and there's the debt exclusion coming down the line for 2023 of $5 million, what's going to happen is those landlords that are taking the burden are going to have to pass that on just like any business. So rent control is not a thing in our society. It's like saying somebody that has a flower shop, because you're selling more flowers than somebody else, you can only sell 5 flowers now, and the other person is going to sell 6. You cannot dictate where the market goes. You cannot dictate where capitalist society goes. You can only control what you can control. And what you can control as a city is the taxes and the fees, water and sewer. And if you control those, you can help give some relief to the taxpayers. And nobody's talking about this, but that's the reality is you have to do what you can control, and that's the only thing you can do.
Thank you. Back up to Sue Netter from WSAR. She'll have the next question, and it will be answered first by Paulo Amaral. Sue.
So, if you're elected to the City Council, one of the expectations of you all will be bringing forward resolutions. Hopefully, those resolutions will be ideas that will help improve the lives of your constituents. On that vein, successful economic development requires out-of-the-box thinking. As a city councilor, what out-of-the-box idea would you bring forward in the form of a resolution to help boost economic development in Fall River?
Well, I think we need to start giving more incentives to businesses and putting a big open sign on top of government center and saying we're open for business. I think we need to give some tax incentives to local developers who develop market rate housing and can help lifelong citizens of this city. I think we talk about developing, we talk about housing, but I think what's been forgotten is the people of this city, the people that live here all their lives. And I think we need to give them help, and I think we should have some kind of ordinance, something on the books that says if you've been here for a long time and you're seeking housing, not only do you have priority, but if you're lower income and a long-time resident of the city, you should be given priority and you should be given some kind of relief. I think that's what's missing here as far as the long-term residents of Fall River. I think they're being left out, and I think that's something very important. It's a passion of mine because, as we know, gentrification is setting in Fall River because of these rents. And the people that live in here, the people on limited income, have been the forgotten ones. And I think we need to figure out and put rules in place and ordinances in place to help those people and make sure they have the resources to continue to live here.
Thank you. Councilor Pereira.
Well, I think that the question was, what resolutions, if any, would you file to make things different? Let me tell you a little bit about the resolutions I have filed. We have a disability commission because I filed that resolution, because people with a disability weren't being serviced and their voices were not being heard. I also formed the Committee of Human Services, Housing, Youth, and Elder Affairs, because those people all live within our community, and I recognize that there is a problem with housing. As far as housing stock here in Fall River, you know that all of the developments that we had were built after the war as a means of apartments. There was a housing shortage for families. Now, if you are out of an apartment and you're low income, there's a wait list. If you live in Fall River, you do get a priority. If you have an eviction, you do get a priority. It's the housing market, and it's the shortage of housing stock. So you want to give incentives to people. That's all well and good to give incentives. But I sit here and I listen to people saying, we need to fix the streets, we need to hire more police. Where do we get the money to give incentives and hire more people? It's a balance that we have to come up with. And it's not an easy job, but it's all a balance. Thank you for that question.
Thank you. Mr. Raposo.
As I drive through Fall River, I notice many of the small businesses that are opening throughout the city. I just happened to drive by one this afternoon. I was like, oh, that's new. And I think that's something we should celebrate. I think there are probably a lot of people among Fall River who've been here a long time who would love to open a small business or have an idea that they don't really know what to do with. How is we as elected officials, as a city, giving services, how can we educate these people to open their small business? Because again, the more businesses we have and the more help we provide to these residents or people coming into our city to invest, it's going to bring us long-term help, especially when we talk about a budget. Because what Councilor Pereira said is correct. At the end of the day, we need to increase our revenues because we cannot continue to sustain our services in Fall River if we do not have economic development. So I think it's time we begin to reach out to the people within and say, hey, do you have an idea? Do you have a small business you would like to open? How can we help you make that dream come true?
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Great question. Wow, the potential we have here in Fall River, it's unbelievable. We have this huge waterfront, we have this beautiful city, and I'm gonna agree with what he said. There's new businesses opening up. I see them on Facebook and social media almost all the time. Young entrepreneurs open up these small businesses, and most of them are been pretty successful if anyone's visited them. It's economics 101. If you build it, they'll come. If we host these events, if you look at like the Days of Portugal, for instance, it attracts thousands of people, businesses, vendors, sponsors. They all spend money here. While they come here, they're gonna spend money at our businesses, and obviously that drives revenue and it's good for the businesses. Why are we only doing that once a year? Why can't we have a Days of Portugal? Why can't we have a Days of every other ethnicity we have here in the city? As far as what we can do to incentivize them, I think helping them out, giving them grants that if they, they stay here for so long, their taxes kind of taper off. It's a big project that I don't have a half hour to talk about, but I think I think the economics here are growing. We're a city on the rise, and I think it's absolutely going in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Tiff.
Fall River is a great city, and I see a lot of economic that is going up, especially the trains coming and stuff. But what I've seen is lack of support for local business, and I don't know if it present what we have is the package for local business here or not, but that's what I would like to see, to create a friendly local package for people who want to make for start up our business, tell them to go which one. Like for example, when I get my first business, I had to go a lot of places, but I would like to have one package for them. Say, hey, start a business in Fall River. This is what you need to do. You go to that department, and then you got to go to this department. You walk them right into it, not let them going around on the city hall, everyone.
Thank you. Ms. Washington?
I think the question was resolutions for economic development, and what I would say to that is one of the resolutions I would file is looking at a tourism director. If we look at the communities that have tourism directors, we know it's money spent, but the return on that investment is massive. We have an amazing city with amazing culture, with unbelievable things to do. Again, look at the room that we're in, look at the Battleship, look at the restaurants. I mean, I've traveled all over the country for the work that I do, and I still come back to we have the best cuisine in the country. People talk about it everywhere. So I think that we need to focus on that and really look at a tourism director and look at the communities around us that have flourished when they hired a tourism director. I think that that is second to none that needs to be looked at. So we can drive people to Mr. Tiff's restaurant.
Thank you. Pam Martin is up next for our next question, and it will be answered first by Matthew Springer.
Okay. When the Bank Street Armory was abruptly closed, a number of veterans organizations were displaced. It was the city's stated position that once the roof was repaired, these organizations would be able to return to that space. Well, the armory's been sold. So many organizations, however, still have their materials, their mementos, their supplies in storage at that Bank Street Armory. It's kind of amazing to see, actually. Presently, many veterans organizations are sharing space at Boyer Veterans Building on Pine Street. But I'm told that there's competition regarding access to parts of that smaller building and conflicting meeting times. So now, what plan do you have to replace that common use space that was once at the Armory for veterans organizations that no longer have that Armory to use?
I'm not even gonna lie, I did not even know that was going on. So, question, what do we do with the veterans organizations that were using this space, and where do we put them? Well, look where we're sitting. We have tons of big open spaces like this that are, I mean, they're used for events, but are, open spaces most of the time. I think getting someone in touch with them, maybe hiring someone or using someone that knows veterans in and out. I actually happen to know one myself who works with veterans on the daily that can maybe guide them in the right direction to spaces and why can't we get this stuff out of there? I don't know who dropped the ball there, but it's a big question. I don't know the answer to it, and I'd just be willing to roll up my sleeves and try to find the right answers to get them in the right place.
Thank you. Mr. Tiff.
That's, I think, Fall River, one thing that we don't have is a open space for the public, especially for nonprofit, because if we have more nonprofit organizations that develop in the city, I think it will help us a lot, because in government we cannot do much funding, but in nonprofit we can do a lot of grant from 501c. And I wish that there was like a more bigger space so that we could use, and then for everybody, like the veteran and stuff.
Thank you. Ms. Washington?
So if I'm being honest, my first phone call would be to Councilor Pereira, who does amazing work with the veterans, and say, what can we do to help these guys? My second call would be to Ray Haig, and then probably Billy Damaris, the War Council, because what is it that they need and what can we do? I mean, our veterans are our foundation of our country. Whatever we can do. I wish I didn't know that was happening. I wish I had all the answers to that. But again, it goes back to communication and collaboration and working with the people who are actively working with that population. And so I would call Councilor Linda Pereira to find out what we could do.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
It's very sad and unfortunate that our veterans are put in this position, and I think we should support and do whatever we can to help them, because without them, we wouldn't have our freedom. So very passionate about helping the veterans, and I think that we have a lot of vacant properties in this city, and I believe Linda probably knows this more than I do, but we have certain schools that we can use and certain buildings that we could use. But we need to come together in government and talk about what we need to do to better the situation, because I think it's totally unacceptable that the way we're treating our veterans, and we can do better than this, and we can put some of these buildings to use and some of these resources that we have in the city and relocate them for the veterans in order to, alleviate the problem and help them out a little bit.
Thank you. Councilor Pereira.
Okay, the Veterans Building on Pine Street, I recently had dedicated to Mr. Ken Boyer, who was the chaplain for a number of years. That is a great building, and the city has spent money repairing roof, new windows, etc. It just isn't large enough for the veteran population. I do have a meeting this coming week with the mayor, because the veterans group have selected a place that they think will be perfect for them, and there's a lot of ideas happening on that. And that meeting will be held with the mayor next week for a possible solution. As to all of the belongings that are in there, we do have the key to go in and to take all of the treasures and all of the artifacts that they have there, and that will be moved to a new location. I did speak with one of the veterans last week after a meeting, and I called the mayor, so those meetings are both in step to do. We in Fall River do not let our veterans go without anything. That's one of the loves that I have of this community, is the respect and admiration we do for our veterans. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Raposo.
First and foremost, we want to thank our veterans for the sacrifices they've made for all of us. As I teach my students all the time, it is our men and women who served that endured our freedom here in our country. Again, I go back to what I said before. I think it's time we do less talking and more listening. They're the ones who put the ultimate sacrifice for our freedom. We need to sit with them and listen to them. What do they need? How can we help them? And to back up what Councilor Pereira said, that's exactly what we need to do. Open up a bigger place for them. How can the city support that? Is it a nonprofit that brings all of our veterans together? And then it becomes a place where people can visit and learn. Because as the generation gets newer and newer, it becomes more and more history. We want to teach our youth about the sacrifice that veterans put forward for us. It's more than just a history book. It's living right in front of them, and we need to be able to have that. So to have a place where A, the mementos and items can be displayed, B, where veterans can meet and come together, and C, where we can educate our people about it, it's a win-win all the way around. It's the city that needs to listen. We need to listen and help them move forward with that idea.
Thank you very much. Up next, Michael Sylvia has the next question for our candidates, and it will be answered first by Ricky Tiff.
Well, as someone who's served 20 years in the Air Force, it's good to hear those kind of responses. I recommend you head down to the Bristol County Veterans Association right around the corner. Check out those guys, what they're doing over there. I'm also someone who looks at the police blotter and talks to the police officers almost every day. I believe we have a serious judge problem in Bristol County, and we have the courthouse right across the street. Let me read one quick story. October 6th, a 15 and an 18-year-old were arrested in New Bedford. The 15-year-old was charged with possessing a large amount of drugs and a loaded handgun. The 18-year-old was charged with drug possession and carrying an illegal knife. That 18-year-old was on probation. The 18-year-old was arrested a week before for pointing a gun at someone and having 4 outstanding warrants. He was released on $500 bail to fast forward to October 6th. After the arrest with the 15-year-old, the 18-year-old on October 6th, the DA asked to revoke bail because he now had 17 open charges and with a history of not showing up to court. He was released by the judge. So I'll ask again, so do we have a serious judge problem in the South Coast? Is there something that the City Council can do about that?
Mr. Tiff.
I can't hear the question again.
Did you say judge problem? Judge.
Yeah, so we have a judge problem, I believe. Catch and release. So you have a 15-year-old, 18-year-old. The 15-year-old was actually held for 120 days.
The 15, right?
The 15-year-old. The 18-year-old was released over and over and over, okay? And I see it all the time. We have the courthouse right over here. DAs are frustrated, the police are frustrated. Doesn't seem like politicians are doing much. So is this something that a city council can do? Come together and maybe do something?
So first thing we need to go get with the judge and ask him, why is like the 15 years old to understand more why the 15-year-old young man is kept in jail, and then the 18 is get out of jail. Learn out the reason why is that, and then let's see. Then come back to the council member and try to get ideas and put a new resolution about that.
Thank you. Ms. Washington?
Unfortunately, this is a bigger issue than the City Council, I think. But what we can do is, I am a big proponent of prevention and having things to do for our youth. And also, when you do something wrong, you have to have a consequence. I am positive reinforcement and also a consequence for your behavior, but that question supersedes what the council can do. What we can do as a community is have as much that we can do for our youth. What do we have for our youth? Working with our executive branch, our mayor, and our school committee to make sure we have resources, the parks are available. I recently seen something that the mayor is working on, the skate parks, the basketball parks. Those are the important things for those things. I wish I could give you the answers that I think. Prison reform is a huge thing. I think all of those things need to happen. That supersedes what this council can do. But what we can do is support our community and support programs that can support our youth in those circumstances.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
Unfortunately, this is not something that the City Council can stop. This is up to the judges. And I agree, a lot of times some of these people should be in jail and they're not, and they're released way too early. But we can concentrate on what we can do. And what we can do is basically try to educate our youth in school. I feel like a lot of parents are missing in a lot of these kids' lives. And it's up to us as a society and even in school to step up through counseling or whatever that may be, in order to give them a positive direction, a positive path. Because like I said, it's very unfortunate that these judges do what they do, but this is more on the state or federal level and not really a city council thing. We as city councils cannot tell the judge you need to leave them in jail or you need longer than this or you can't release them. But what we can do, like I said, is we can educate. And I think that starts at school because it's very unfortunate, and we really need to drive the message home to these kids to choose the right path and prevent this before it becomes something and before they go to court and before they get arrested and go to court and in front of a judge. So my answer would be more education at school and just really talking it out with these kids.
Thank you. Councilor Pereira.
Well, having been an investigator for the District Attorney's Office for 10 years, I feel the frustration when you're going in with a victim, you have all the evidence, you have all the charges, and people get a slap on the wrist. And I see that with a lot of the police officers feeling the same way. But I will tell you, they do a drug court so that the drug court will help an individual without incarcerating them, but giving them certain things that they have to follow through with. In speaking with Mrs. Brito, who is our new Veterans Service Officer, she'd like to implement a court for veterans, that if there's a veteran that gets convicted of something, you know, drug use, a driving accident or what have you, to have veterans help out with that. But when you talk about judges, some states elect their judges. Should we be doing that? Maybe that's a decision or a discussion to be had amongst people. Another thing is, should we have judges that live in this area versus a judge that comes here from Newton, comes to Fall River, and then they go home at night? Or should it be a judge that actually lives here? And thirdly, the Scared Straight program that Sheriff Hodgson has, to have kids go in, see what it's like in a prison, that's education too. But those are some of the suggestions. But I do agree, and I feel the frustration when you feel like somebody just got slapped on the hand.
Thank you. Mr. Raposo.
In the story you mentioned, clearly both individuals are young people. How do we reach out to those young people? And I think education obviously is the key. But I think there's one more step. It's peer mentorship. How can we help that 15-year-old young man get back on the right path he needs to? Maybe he has someone who can peer mentor him and show him that, listen, the path you're on right now is not the best way. Here's what we can do. Let's work together. And I think sometimes when they're at it by themselves and they're alone, they're just going to go back to the same issues and the same problems over and over again. We need to reach out to them. I think peer mentorship, especially in education, is a beautiful thing. I've seen kids peer mentored by older young men or women, and they've done great things. So education is key to this. I think the judge issue is beyond our city council realm, but if we can invest and help our kids and get some peer mentorship for them, I think that will lead to better results.
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat basically what everyone said. Obviously, the judge thing is something that's beyond our control, and things we do have control in is obviously the youth. They thrive on, I think, structure, and they're kind of products of their environment, and I think it starts young. So keeping them on the right path with school, or if they're unfortunately in different foster cares, it's very easy for them to stray off the path. And I think instead of throwing them in jail, or, you know, I mean, obviously a 15-year-old having drugs and an 18-year-old having a handgun, where'd they get it? And going back to, like, maybe harsher punishment for the person that let them get the gun or where they got the drugs from. And like Councilor Pereira said, the Scared Straight thing, they need to be right in the face. They need to know what it's like when you go to prison, that people can't even visit you. You're on a video conference call. Your friend's not going to talk to you anymore. You're not going to be cool in school. And I think that the education is what drives this home for the young ones, and giving them positive reinforcement and activities to do that make them feel good.
Thank you. Back to Sue Netter for our next question, and it will be answered first by Laura Washington.
The City Council and the School Committee are two separate elected bodies. This year, we not only saw them intersect, we saw them collide. When, if ever, should the two bodies intersect? And how should any differences of opinion be handled by the two?
Thank you.
So they are two separate bodies for two separate reasons. One focuses on one thing and the other, and it should be respected as such. Although I think it's extremely important that they collaborate on a regular basis outside of just being reactive when an issue comes up that they don't like. I think being proactive in this situation is extremely important. So what I would bring to the table is actively working with the school committee together with the city council for the best interest of our city. It's extremely important. So to answer the question, I think that it is important that the city council remains doing their city council duties and the school committee, but they work together and communicate for the betterment on a regular basis, not just on a reactive basis.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral?
So there was a massive collide between the city council and the school committee. And I know in our charter, I believe that the mayor is supposed to have a seat on the city council, but I believe that the mayor should be the acting mayor and not have a seat, because as we've seen what happened in the city council, that whole fiasco could have been handled a lot sooner, a lot better. But I think when you have differences of opinions and different politics sitting in two capacities of government, you have problems that you had. That should have been something that should have been handled a lot sooner, a lot faster, and a lot cleaner than what it was. And I believe it's because of their own interests and the fact that they're serving to please the people on the committees or to please the people on the administration that we had that mess. So I would like to see a total separation of the city council and the school committee. And I think that starts by having one person, that's there right now, that's a mayor, just do that job and handle that job. And then obviously, we need to have communications between the two branches. But when you have somebody that's sitting on two capacities, on two levels, I think that brings some issues that we saw. And I think that could have been handled a lot better had the mayor just done his job and let the city council do theirs, and then we figure out what the problems are. Come to the table, talk, and figure it out.
Thank you. Council Pereira.
Well, the city council does have a liaison to the school committee. What the city council does with the school committee is the budget and net school spending. That's it. Why the school department issues ended up on the floor of the council is unknown to me. It's a lack of leadership that should never have happened. They are two separate bodies. And for the city council, any city councilor, to make a decision on what should happen to someone from the school committee, that discussions were had in executive session. How in God's name do you make a decision when you don't have all the information? That should have never happened. And to have counselors going on Facebook, creating Facebook pages, I thought was inappropriate. We have free speech in this country, and people can do whatever they choose to do. I personally don't agree with that. And the mayor serves on the school committee because that is what our charter says. He doesn't have a seat on the council, just on the school committee. However, I think that the negativity, as Mr. Springer said earlier, really hurts our community, and it does. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Tebow.
Mr. Raposo.
I think it's important that the city council and school committee are separate, because the school committee focuses solely on the investment and the forward thinking for our youth. If I am blessed to be elected, I would love to be that liaison to the school committee. As an educator and going through the public school system, we need to listen to the kids. I was fortunate when I was a senior at Durfee to be a part of a forum talking to our elected officials of what we as students needed. I would love to be that liaison to the school committee on a broader sense and go to our kids, walk into the beautiful New Durfee High School and say to those students, what can we do for you? I think as elected officials, city council, school committee, mayor, whoever you are, we need to listen to them so we can bring back ideas, work collaboratively together. We teach our kids in class to work collaboratively and work in groups to accomplish our team goal. We need to do the same thing here. So again, if I was blessed to be elected, I would love to be that liaison to the school committee. They both have very important jobs. Working together and collaboratively for our youth to move it forward in our city is the best way forward.
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Great question, and I got a pretty simple answer to this one. Just do your job. We're both elected to two separate elected bodies for a reason. The school committee is for our youth, as he said, and the city council is for the city council to do their job. They don't share, and for the city council to go step into the school committee, they don't have all the info, as Councilor Pereira said. So it goes back that they're playing politics with the youth instead of putting the best interests of the citizens or the youth first. Should never happen, don't know why it happened, should never happen again. Hopefully it doesn't. Simple answer, do your job you're elected to do, plain and simple.
Thank you. Mr. Tith.
Well, I see is, I think, because it's a lack of communication, reaching out to each other. As a councilor, maybe a president or vice councilor, we sit down together and say, hey, this is we having a problem arising with the school committee. So this is what we're gonna talk about, and this is what we're gonna go to see whoever's in charge of the school committee, and then we'll let them know that we would like to give me us answer with this question, and then we would like to help you with this. So that's why if we don't respect each other, everybody's gonna butt head and start pointing finger at each other, and the only one that hurt is the Fall River resident.
Thank you. We're going to try to get one more question in before our closing statements, but what we're going to do for this round is each of you will have 1 minute to answer a question instead of 90 seconds. And that question will be asked by Pam Martin, and it will go first to Andrew Raposo.
Okay, I'll change focus here, Keith. Real quick, speed questions. What are your top 3 made in Fall River products?
Mr. Raposo.
Can you repeat that, Pamela?
Okay, so your top 3 made in Fall River products.
Top 3 made
You can think of. What do you buy regularly?
Well, when I think of made in Fall River, I think of Merrill Manufacturing. And I've seen, actually went online and checked out some of the clothes. They're actually pretty nice. So, I hear Mark talk about it all the time on his show, so I'm gonna go check that out sometime. That's one thing for sure. Being a part of the Portuguese community, my God, the amount of Portuguese items that are made in this city, especially when I go down past the imports down here off of Bedford Street, and you walk into Portugalia Marketplace and see all the beautiful items that are there, both from overseas and from within our own walls. Those are the things I think about, and among other things. When I think of Fall River, that's what resonates with me.
Thank you. Mr. Springer.
Cool. My very top one I love, Sam's Meat Pies. I hope it never goes away. My God, whoever has a recipe for that, I hope they pass it on for 100 years. No one's ever going to duplicate it, made here. If you haven't tried it, very sorry. The other cool thing we have 2 breweries in Fall River, which is awesome. We have 2 craft breweries, one making award-winning things and getting us known on a national level. And I do like Merrill, with the clothing and whatnot. But another one that rings right to my head is Bonehead Wings. Another one that puts us winning these national competitions for all these awesome things. These are positive things. These are things we need to focus on. People come from all over to try these different things. Easy.
Mr. Tith.
Suppose it's the people of Fall River, because this is the most diversity and most respectable people that I have lived in since I could live in this state. And then also our battleship, the waterfront. We have a beautiful waterfront, and we need to revive it more, put some more stuff in there, especially like events and stuff. We work with the state and work with our local.
Ms. Washington.
My top 3. The Battleship. I could go on the Battleship 500 times and not get sick of it. I just love the whole thing. I love it. I've been doing it since I was a kid. My kids have gone on it 900 times. So that's number 1. The food in the city, all the restaurants. I think of all the amazing restaurants that local. I love that. The South Coast Marketplace shopping. The shopping is great. The shopping has gotten tremendously better. I love to shop. So those are my top 3. But I want to say again, I'm so excited about the new director at the Battleship. I'm excited about that. So.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
When I think of Fall River, without a doubt, I think about the culture and the people of the city, first of all. And then I think about chow mein sandwiches, shrimp Mozambique. I think about the history of this great city. Think about Lindsey Borden. And really, that's what I think. I think about the opportunity that this city has given so many people and how great this city was and can become. So that's what I think of the history. I think of some of the food items. And, I think how lucky we are to be from Fall River, because it really is a great city.
Thank you. Councilor Pereira.
I'm all about the food. I'm all about the food. I can tell you every restaurant what my favorite thing is at all the restaurants. And I'm about the drink, and I think Troy City just did a wonderful ale called the Foot Rail for Chief Lynch, our fire chief. And the other thing made in Fall River, I like the Gnome Shop and the artists that we have in Fall River. that are creating art here, that is selling their art in Czechoslovakia, in London, and going all over. And it's like a secret that people don't know about. But I think the arts and culture here have really blossomed in Fall River. Go to the Fabrics Festival and you'll catch it all.
All right.
Well, food is still number one.
Thank you. Those are our final questions for today. Now time for our closing statements. And our first closing statement will be presented by Councilor Linda Pereira. You're first.
Thank you. Thank you to you, Keith, and Fall River C Media. And thank you to the panelists that were here today from WSAR and FRG-TV and from the Fall River Reporter. I appreciate it that you all took the time to come here. And I also want to say thank you to all the candidates at this table, because I'm the only incumbent elected person that is here, and I give you all kudos for having the courage to put your names on the ballot and wanting to make Fall River a better place. I believe in being accessible and accountable to people. That's my number one priority. And I want to promote Fall River and do good things. You won't see me on Facebook doing negative stuff. I don't do it. 2.5 years, I worked on the Vietnam Wall Committee. I chaired the 3 events that they had. We have a beautiful, beautiful monument there, and it's bringing in tourism. I created access to the waterfront by the picnic area. Come by October 30th, and you'll see what we've got going there. I was upset with the lighting in the city. I fixed the lighting in the city. I got on them, 600 bulbs were changed, and it didn't cost us a penny. And I'm also doing Fall River's Got Talent. That'll be done on December 12th. Let's work together. I don't do any of this alone, but it's good people, and we have good people in Fall River who want to do good things. Working together, good things can be done.
Thank you, Councilor.
Respect your vote on the 2nd of November.
Thank you very much. Mr. Raposo.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you to Fall River Community Media, our panel, and also our friends behind the scenes that are working hard over there getting us so the citizens of Fall River can listen to this forum. As a lifelong city resident that was educated in our school system, and I own a home in the city, I recognize that Fall River is a city at a crossroads. There are a few things that we already know. We need improvement in infrastructure, investment in public safety, and a quality education for our young people. However, we need to bring better control to the purse strings, being our budget of the city. The residents of Fall River do not deserve to continue to have to face additional burdens of increases again and again. As a city council, we need to look at the bigger picture and how we can make Fall River sustainable and prosper as we know it can. In short, it's time for a little bit of change. The time has come to change in the city council. The time has come to end the gridlock, to end the disagreements, and to end the self-interest. We need to recognize that the citizens of Fall River look to us to make decisions that will help move our great city forward. In that, I promise, if elected, I'll work to build bridges to my colleagues and not silos around us. I ask for your vote on November 2nd so we can work together to continue to move Fall River forward.
Thank you very much. Mr. Springer.
Again, thank you to Fall River Community Media and all the panel and everyone working hard to make this happen. First and foremost, it has been an absolute honor and a privilege for me the second time to even get a chance to become a Fall River City Councilor. I've met some incredible people along the way, and the ideas that people have, you can't even fit on a panel of 9. That being said, a little background about myself. I was born and raised right here in Fall River. I'm 33 years old. I grew up in the North End in a house that my parents built and still live there to this day. I was fortunate enough when I was 25, I purchased a home in the South End, which I still live in to this day. I attended Atlantis Charter School for middle school, where I went on to graduated from Diamond Regional in 2006. My most recent job, I work in the emergency room at Charlton Memorial Hospital. It is one of the most exciting, rewarding, stressful, unbelievable jobs that I've ever got to do. I get to help people change in a positive way every single day, and it's amazing. Second thing, I have no prior agenda to run for city council besides the fact that I want to make a change. All I can promise, I can't promise I can change it. I can't promise I can do it by myself. I'll roll up the sleeves, put the work in, put the nose to the grindstone. Time to put the citizens of Fall River first. With that, I ask for your vote on November 2nd. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Mr. Tith.
Thank you, Keith, and thank you, Michelle, for making me look good so everybody could look at home, watch at home. And thank you to everybody out there. Also, thank you to the resident that is watching right now, because this is very important. So now we gotta ask ourselves, the next 2 years, are we going to be the same, or are we going to move forward with a new, like a opportunity for candidates that maybe have ideas that want to share? I have been trying to run for almost 3 times now. This is my 3rd time, and I never give up because I love Fall River, and this is my place, my home now. And I don't have much offer like prior, but I know what to do, what to do, and I'm hoping that you give me an opportunity this year for running for City Council, and hopefully you'll elect me as one of your 9. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Washington.
So thank you, FRC Media, for this forum, and the Cultural Center. What a beautiful royal ballroom to have a forum in. But as someone who grew up in this city, who grew up going to the Fabric of Fall River film, almost every weekend with our family, and the hot chocolate follies, and what pride that we had and have in our city. And I have a deep love for this community. I grew up in very humble beginnings in Glasgow Street in Fall River. And as I grew and became successful in my own right, and grew skills, as I sit today, I know that I have the skills that could give back to this community. And I really feel now it is my responsibility to the city that I love and to my residents who are just me, I am you, to give back to my community and build a foundation of communication together. And so I'm hoping that you vote for me, one of your 9 votes, on November 2nd.
Thank you. Mr. Amaral.
Thank you to Fall River Media and the panel. I'm doing this for what I think have been the forgotten people of Fall River, the hard-working taxpayer that gets up at 7 o'clock in the morning to go to work, the ones that bring their kids to school and ensure that their kids have food on the table and provide safety. I think we need to do better for those people, the people that contribute. 40% of the money that the city takes in revenue is through those hardworking people, through the landlords that have been forgotten, to the people that work. And that's the people that I want to help. I came to the United States at the age of 9 with nothing but a bag of clothes. And thanks to Fall River, it has given me the opportunity to succeed. And now I believe it's my turn to give back to the city that has given me the opportunity. So I just really want to help the citizens of Fall River. I want to advocate for cleaner streets. I want to advocate for affordable housing. And those hardworking taxpayers, those lifelong citizens that live in Fall River. I think it's very important that we don't forget those people, and I think they have been forgotten. The other thing too is I want to see this city in good financial standing, and the way it's going right now, I don't see that happening. So that's a big concern of mine. If you want to save money and you care about your taxes, you should consider voting for me on November 2nd, because I will help you, the taxpayer, and I appreciate everything the taxpayers do for this city, and I think we cannot do enough to at least alleviate some of the burden on the hardworking people of this city. So thank you.
Thank you. Again, I want to thank the candidates and the panelists tonight for joining us for tonight's City Council Forum. I also want to thank our hardworking FRC Media staff working behind the scenes to my left, Steve Rice, Lucy Cabral, Michelle Dumas, and also Alex Mello from FRG TV for lending a hand as well. And thanks to the Cultural Center for hosting us tonight. Again, this is a beautiful space, and it's a great location for our forums both tonight and tomorrow. You can watch a replay of this forum on both Channel 95 FRC Media, Channel 18 FRG TV, as well as our website, frmedia.org, where you can rewatch these forums as well as candidate statements that we've recorded for many of the candidates you have seen here and will continue to see over the next few weeks. Please vote on November 2nd. We'll be partnering with FRG TV once again to provide live election results. Thank you all for watching.